Hello quilt artisans, my name is Shonda and welcome to my channel Under the Needle. So, not that I don't have enough on my plate, but I've decided I want to do a beginner quilter series. And basically what this is going to be is I've chosen a pattern that I think is, relatively beginner friendly. And I'm going to walk you through making that quilt project step by step. So in today's video, I'm going to show you the pattern that we're going to be making, and I am also going to tell you everything that you're going to need to get started. So I'm going to pop the picture of the quilt here. So that's what the quilt looks like. And this quilt is called Arrowheads. It is a free quilt pattern. I will put the link in the description. I have talked to the pattern designer and she did give me permission to demo this pattern. So I can demo the pattern, but I can't like print it for you or distribute it to you in any way, but I can provide you with the link to their website. It's called Wood Valley Designs, and I can provide you with the link to their website, and you can go to that website and get the pattern yourself, and I can demo it for you. So I'm going to go over a little bit about what you're going to absolutely have to have in order to get started. Of course, you're going to need a sewing machine. If you want to hand sew, you're on the wrong channel. I'm going to be honest with you because I hand sew absolutely nothing. Now, Brenda over at Conquering Mount Scrapmore, she hand sews some stuff, so that might be a better place to look for something like that. But I would be using a sewing machine. And of course, if you're using a sewing machine, you're going to need sewing machine needle, you're going to need thread, you're going to need a bobbin, and electricity, of course, unless you're using one of those old ones that doesn't use electricity. Those still exist. So you are going to need an iron. It does not matter what kind of iron you have. You can use any kind of irons. I have used everything from a $10 iron to a fancy $200 iron, and it's not going to matter. It's not. Do I have preferences? Am I a little bougie in my quilting? Yes, I am. But it's not required, because when I first started out, I had a $10 iron, and I still was able to make several quilts. You are going to need a rotary cutter. It does not matter what kind of rotary cutter you have, but you're going to need one. I have several. If you want me to discuss my rotary cutters, the one I have, the one I use, my preferences, you can let me know in the description. That's going to be a completely separate video. You are going to need a cutting mat. Now, if you have the space, I recommend the 24 by 36. Okay. If this is something that you plan to do often, that is the cutting mat that I recommend. But you can get a Fiskars 24 by 36 cutting mat every day at Walmart for 30 bucks. You can also get it on Amazon for $30 as well. There are more expensive ones, but that's the one I use. It's easy to get. It's easy to use. It works fine. If you cannot, if cost is a factor, if space is a factor, you can get away with one that's 18 by 24. But I recommend the larger one. You are going to need a ruler. You're going to need a 6.5 by 24 inch ruler. I happen to use the Creative Grids one, but when I started, I had an Omni Grid one, and I used that, and it was fine. When I got older, those yellow lines started to get a little bit harder for me to see, and that was why I switched to Creative Grids, but I used Omni Grid for years without an issue. Much less expensive, much more accessible, and I believe Fiskars has them as well, and I believe Walmart carries all of these products. They have the ruler, they have the cutting mat, they have the rotary cutter. You are going to need fabric, of course, and for this project you will need 3 1-yard cuts of fabric. I'm trying to decide which 3 I'm going to use. I left one of my fabrics over there. Hold on, guys. So I have some quilting cotton that I had picked up from Joann's, and I've got these 3 prints here that I could put together, or potentially these 3, and I'm not quite sure what I want to do yet. Or I could even mix you know, take this one and put it in with here. You know, I'm going to mix and match. I'm not sure which 3 I'm going to use, but I'm going to choose 3 and I will use those. I do buy fabric from Joann's, just not often. And not because I have a problem with their fabric, but I am shopping for fabric for shopping's sake. I'm not shopping for a specific fabric. So when you are just shopping for shopping's sake, for me, it is easier to buy a collection. So I'm going to get half yards or you know, some kind of pre-cut, right? That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to have that collection, and then I can use that fabric in any pattern that uses any pre-cut, and I'm good. Whereas when you're buying yardage, it's not quite that way. First of all, if you're in Joann's, you'd have to curate your own color selection, and you'd have to then have them cut the half yards for you, which they can. But it's just a lot for me to do that, to try to curate my own collection from their fabrics. It's much easier for me to buy a pre-cut that's already put together, or fabrics from a specific line that are already meant to go together. It's just easier for me. But I have no issues with their fabric. They just don't work for curating. If you're buying fabric just to buy fabric to look at it and because it's pretty and you pet it, when you buy a bunch of yards, I've got some yardage down there, but it's like when it's time to make a quilt, it's like, what do I put together? I don't know. And then I don't have enough of it. It's like when you use a pattern that requires yardage, it's like you need 2 1/4 yards of this and 3 yards of that and 1 1/4 yard of that. So how, even if you find the pattern and you find fabrics in your stash that match, are you going to have enough to make the pattern? So that's why I don't buy fabric from Joann's. But that's neither here nor there. So you're going to need 3 yards of fabric that coordinate in a pleasing way. You are going to need the pattern, of course, which I'm going to provide the link, and some optional things that you're going to need. Well, I take that back. Not optional. The seam ripper is not optional. Now, your sewing machine comes with one. It's kind of trash sometimes, usually. I like this one from Clover. It's relatively inexpensive, about $4 or $5. It does not come with a cover, but my son is an asthmatic, so I took one of his little tubes for the nebulizer, cut a piece, fits perfectly. I don't have to worry about stabbing myself. So you'll need that. Optional but recommended, pins. I'm recommending that you have pins. Can you do this without pins? You can. I just don't recommend that you do it without pins. So you're going to need that. That's optional. And another thing that's optional would be starch. So starch is optional. I like a little best press or a little starch on my fabric, especially since if you look at this pattern, we're going to be working with half square triangles. So I like a little starch, but it is optional. It's not required. I'm trying to keep your costs down. So, and optional also is a 6.5 inch ruler. If you have a 6.5 inch ruler, that is going to be great, because we are going to have to square up these half square triangles. Now, I am going to show you how to use the larger ruler to square up those 6.5 inch triangles. You can use this, but it's big and it's cumbersome, and it's going to be a lot easier if you have something a little smaller. So if you have some other rulers, perhaps if you have quilted before, just if you have anything that you can use to square to 6.5 inches. So if you have a 10 inch ruler, we can use that. That'll be a little less unwieldy. I can never say that word. Unwieldy. I can't say it. It'll be easier to manage. A smaller ruler is going to be easier to manage. When you are using a 24.5 inch ruler to square up something that's only 6.5 inches, it's a bit of a pain. So that's also optional. So again, we're going to be doing this pattern. It's called Arrowheads. Link is in the description to find the pattern. Absolutely, you're going to need a functioning sewing machine with a needle and thread and a bobbin. You're going to need an iron to do some pressing. You're going to need a rotary cutter. You're going to need a cutting mat, a seam ripper, 3 1-yard cuts of fabric, And then optional are some pins and a 6.5-inch ruler. Trying to make it as easy as possible. So when you get the pattern, if you want to go ahead, if you want to join me, please do. I'm also going to be doing this on my Facebook page, so that you guys can ask questions and communicate with me. So I'm going to add this video to my Facebook page, and I'll put that link in the description. And that way you guys can ask me questions that you may have regarding this, and let me know if you want to participate. And then also, if you are participating, I can kind of follow along with you and check your progress and see how you're doing, because it'll be fun for me, and you guys will be able to see how my stuff is coming out. So that's really it. That's really all I've got. I'm looking at doing this every 2 weeks. That's kind of the schedule that I'm on. So today is Thursday, March 3rd. So by 2 weeks from now, I would say have your materials, your fabric, and all that good stuff. And if you want to go ahead and press, you can press if you like. But we're going to be cutting together. I don't recommend that you do any cutting, okay? Because this pattern was written for batiks. Because one of the cuts has you cut a strip that's 2.5 by 44.5. Now, most quilting cotton is 42 to 44. Now, batiks tend to be a little bit larger because they don't really have a real selvage, and so you can use that full selvage to selvage on a batik, whereas on quilting cotton you cannot. And when I say selvage, if you're really new, that's this piece on the edge of your fabric here. We can't use that because it's white, and even if it wasn't white, like on this side, this is selvage also. It looks like it's printed, and it is, but this fabric is different than the rest of the yardage. That piece on the end is different. It doesn't behave in the same way. So we don't like to put it in our quilts, so we don't like to use it. And so there's no way, if we're using regular quilting cotton, that we can get 44.5 inches unless you get lucky and, you know, it just works out for you. I don't know, but I don't think it's going to work. So, because we're not using batiks. If we're using batiks, we'd be good. But using quilting cotton, we're not. So, we're going to have to cut this in a different way. And also, what I'm going to do differently is I am not going to do, if you read the pattern, she has us cutting the half square triangles a little differently. She has you cut the square in half, and then piece the triangles together, which is completely valid. But those are bias edges, and if you are a newer quilter, a lot of times we kind of want to avoid handling those bias edges because it's really easy to stretch that fabric, and then things get a bit wonky. So I don't want to do it that way. I am going to use my preferred method of constructing half square triangles, and that is the 4 at a time method. So I am not going to cut this anywhere near the way the cut instructions are on the pattern, like at all. It's going to be completely different. And since I can't provide you with a printable, we'll just have to cut it together so that I can walk you through each step of how we're going to cut this fabric. So let's see, is there anything else? Yeah. So get your fabric. If you want to get it pressed, you can, but do not make any cuts. Do not cut anything. Also, if you are wanting to I don't pre-wash my fabric, okay, at all. I use some steam and either water or best press. Generally best press or starch is what I use. And that water hitting the fabric, that steam hitting the fabric, causes the fabric to shrink a little. And so if you are using, if you're pre-washing, this is not going to work. These cutting instructions are not going to work. So if you are committed to pre-washing, let me know, because I'll probably I'll have to adjust for that in some way. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but I've done the math, and doing this my way, this will 100% work. So get your fabric, get your materials, don't do any cutting, and I will see you 2 weeks from now. We'll be cutting, and when is that? St. Patty's Day, so March 17th. So March 17th, I will be back here with my fabric all pressed up, and we will cut it together, and I'll show you how it goes. So that's all I've got. If you got any questions, you can ask me in the description, or better yet, if you have any questions, well, you can ask in the description if you would like. Not in the description, in the comments. You can ask in the comments if you like. But like I said, I'm also going to post this video on my Facebook page. And so if you just want to click the link to my Facebook page and come over there and ask me any questions over there, it might be a little bit easier for people who are joining in to see the questions. So either one works, but I do prefer the Facebook page. So I think that's it for real. Oh, no, it's not. You're going to need a walking foot. If you're planning to actually quilt this by yourself, you're going to need a walking foot. They are relatively inexpensive. You can get them at Joann's for about 10 bucks. You can also find them on Amazon. I'm not sure if Walmart has these or not, but I will put a link in the description to a walking foot. I'll also put a link to the seam ripper, the Facebook page, and the pattern. So if I forgot anything, y'all keep me straight. I think that covers it. Yeah, so I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Well, of course, if you guys are going to be at the International Stitch Marathon, I'm going to see you tomorrow. And then, of course, there'll be other videos. I don't know why I said I'll see you in 2 weeks. I'm going to see you before then. But in 2 weeks, we'll be coming back for cutting, and we'll see how all that goes. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you next video.